Metaverse.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and guys, I made a purchase recently.
You've made a lot of purchases.
Yeah, this wasn't sent to me review because we needed a functional sword.
A rapier, to be
rapier
specific. We have not had a functional one this whole time.
But now we do. This is the Swept Hilt Rapier from Windlass, not sponsored. Purchased it, it was at a good price.
Around $2.99 US.
Roughly.
Yeah, so decent price, got a good reputation, Windlass. We're gonna put it through its paces as well, so I guess we'll get to review it. But what this also gives us the opportunity is to talk about the rapier, because this is a very misunderstood sword.
A beautiful sword.
It is a beautiful sword that is very misunderstood.
And very dangerous.
Oh, yes.
That's actually one of my big takeaways I want people to understand about this sword. So, the biggest point of comparison to any other sword with a rapier is the other most common one-handed sword, the arming sword. This is another new sword I purchased. This is actually the Todd Cutler
I don't
sword.
think these are, I think they're sold out.
I think it's sold out, yes.
Makes sense.
So, there is a distinct difference in design, you might say.
There is.
And the arming sword, like especially well-made ones, right, are crazy effective weapons.
They are, and they're a lot lighter than they look. They look big and chunky and heavy. You think like big, thick Hollywood blade. It's not.
This is one of the big misconceptions people have. By looking at these two swords, people naturally think thinner blade, okay, smaller handle, really thin kind of, sweeping. They assume the rapier's clearly a lighter sword.
Which makes sense. To just visually, that does make a lot of sense.
But in reality, these swords weigh the same. In actual fact, the rapier might be a bit heavier. We'll weigh them. We'll actually, because we've got multiple arming swords to get a baseline, because this is on the upper, it's on the heavier side, but it's actually, I would consider more medium weight. So let's do a weigh-in, and then we're going to talk more about the misconceptions around these swords and the design, the weight, because people, when they think of the rapier, they look at it, that's elegant. What a really elegant kind of civilized sword.
For a more civilized time, you'd say?
When the reality is, the rapier is a vastly more brutal, deadly sword that is optimized and designed for killing people.
Yes. This is the dueling blade. And when it got to dueling, a lot of the deaths happened by stabs, not by cuts, not by slashes, not by dismemberments. And that is designed purely to get as much stabby into your opponent as possible.
A pointy weapon to point people.
But first, let's do an official weigh-in. Now, let's actually do a baseline with a more stereotypical arming sword, which is our blunt trainer right here. Have a look at the size and profile. This is really representative of a lot of arming swords.
So this one is going to come in at 1.1 kilos. This is where this is coming out, which is very similar to like a katana or a little bit under a longsword.
But let's weigh this arming sword to get a representative. Have a look at the profiles.
Now,
okay, so
it's a little bit shorter, I think.
It is.
A little bit shorter, a little bit thinner, and as a result, this is also representative of a good number of arming swords. It's about a kilo.
About a kilo, yeah.
So 1 kilo, about 1.1 kilos. The Todd Cutler arming sword, let's weigh this in. 1.17. What's interesting, this is such a broader blade.
Yeah.
Yet have a look, these are nearly the same in weight.
That is true, but this is a more historically accurate blade that has been designed and balanced the way that it's meant to, whereas this is a fully functional, for training, a fully functional sword. It's a little less historically accurate.
Look at the tip. It's flattened out. It's made to be for training.
I also wouldn't say this one is that quality, to be honest.
But, so, 1.1...
8.
So
nearly 1.2. Yeah.
Nearly 1.2 kilos, okay? So that gives us a good baseline. For arming swords, you're looking at a range between 1 to 1.2 kilos on average. People assume the rapier is just a lighter sword. Look, it's light. It looks lighter, doesn't it? Let's do an official weigh-in. 1.08. So about 1.1, okay? And which puts it right in the ballpark of heavier than this arming sword, about the same as this one right here, okay?
It's about the same weight, roughly.
About the same weight. So what's happening here is there is less weight in the blade. It's much more narrow and thin, but where does the weight come back? Right here, right in the hilt. Now that lowers the point of balance drastically. Look at the point of balance on this, where about here. Though, having said that, This is a bit. You would almost consider this a bit of a beefier rapier.
I would, yeah. That one's a bit beefy.
It also has no counterweight. A lot of the weight is either around the hand or forward of the blade because they're such long blades. So it is more designed to be a slicer. Like its tip is designed to do the damage compared to
to thrust. But the thing is, because all the weight is concentrated, the point control on this is nuts. Like,
awesome.
look at how fine control you have of that point.
Sorry, I should say hard defense. It can riposte beautifully.
It's interesting the difference in just because there's more mass.
Sorry, I was just thinking about that clip out of context. Just shut. Look, guys, look.
Now we do have an example of a even thinner rapier. In fact.
We do.
We have it right here.
However, the steel of this particular rapier...
This is stainless steel.
Yes.
But it's comparable for, like, stainless steel, normal steel, it's the same weight. And so, in terms of comparing maneuverability and stuff, this one feels gorgeous.
This one is beautiful. Yeah. Finishing on it is this is way better. I love playing with this one a lot more than that one. Even the finishing down here on the guard is a lot better, but obviously it is stainless steel, so we can't actually... do anything with it.
For those who don't know, the reason being is because when stainless steel bends, it stays bent. So if we stab into something and the blade flexes, we no longer have a rapier.
So this actually is a lighter sword.
900 grams.
0.9 kilos. So this is really narrow, really thin. What you would find from this is that it would have more trouble cutting than this. There's just less mass in the blade, but sharpened up, a sword like this still would be able to cut.
Yeah.
But the point is, you shouldn't consider all rapiers the same.
Right.
There's beefier ones, there's lighter ones, and there's ones with even wider blades than this, but you are getting into the side sword kind of cut and thrust range when you get there, because one of the misconceptions, they assume swept hilts are only ever on thin blades. No, there are many swords historically that had basically arming sword blades with a swept hilt. And generally they're called side swords or cut and thrust swords. So this style of hilt did exist on other style blades. And actual fact, historically, the name terminology, we do not use the same names now, what they were called back then.
Oh, no.
Oftentimes a side sword is actually referred to as a rapier, and a sword like this was referred to as with different names. Sometimes this was actually called longsword. Look how long it was.
I did not know that.
Didn't you know that? Yeah,
no.
Like, it depends, like, different countries use different terminologies. There was no set codified standard of sword terminology back then. And a lot of times they just use kind of descriptive words and names for them. And so rapier is the term that we now identify with this actual sword, even though it wasn't necessarily called that in period, especially between different languages. So there's that point. Swept hilts did evolve as well. You can get like more enclosed ones, which are called basket hilts. You can get clamshells. This is a very stereotypical classic rapier swept hilt. In fact, they got the same. These two have the...
They do. They're virtually identical.
Just different in size, basically, is the only variance. So weight is a big misconception. We've addressed that. This is actually a standard weighted one-handed sword, which means you'll actually tire just as quickly using this. It is not meant for dexterous people or people with less strength. In actual fact, having more strength helps you use it.
I was going to say, I think that if you tried to use this like a normal sword, swinging it rather than being very point control, you would exhaust yourself quickly. More quickly because there's less balance in the bottom.
I actually think, well, when you fight with a rapier, the way that you're meant to fight
the way that you're meant to fight.
When it's presenting like this, oh my gosh, the arm strength and like the exertion and conditioning you need to maintain rapier positioning, you actually need more strength to fight with a rapier, the way rapiers are stereotypically fought with. And yeah, there are some variants between sword disciplines, right? But you actually need more strength and more physical conditioning, because like arming swords, there's a lot of positions where you can just kind of, there's a rest position, stuff like that. Rapiers, like maintain that for as long as you can, then, eh?
Sure, I'll just stand here
hold that
like
out
this
while we continue.
Whilst we talk.
I can hold that one out as well.
Oh, you give the strong guy the lighter one.
Yeah, actually, that's not fair.
No, it's fine.
I agree with you though, Shad. I have used that sword. I've done some cuts with it, and it actually does require more energy to be with the point out rather than actually trying to just use it like a normal sword. It's kind of interesting.
Sorry, I was joking. You don't have to keep
So you have we're doing this now.
Doing it now. People think it's lighter, but no, this would be just as difficult with this sword. Not meant for weak people. In actual fact, strength is needed to fight rapiers. Rapiers, are very much strength-based weapons.
They are.
And in terms of, it's actually a dexterous, we see role-playing games screw that up all the time. D&D, Rapier is, you can, in classic like 3.5, weapon finesse can be a feat used for Rapier, which I've already done videos because that annoyed me. Weapon finesse is a feat that allows you to apply your dexterity score to attack instead of strength.
I kind of like that for a game mechanical point of view, not necessarily for a historical accurate point of view, though dexterity does come in big when you're trying to go, can I apply damage through being nimble?
I like it as a game mechanic. What bothered me...
Did you see the slow blink on Tyrant there? He's like, no, strength is strength.
What bothered me about the game mechanic is that you couldn't apply it to other weapons. And I mean, in actual fact, using a longsword with 2 hands, you can maneuver that faster and more nimbly than you can with a rapier in 1 hand. Okay?
Okay.
Longsword, you can get ones at 1.2 kilos. That's only 0.1 of a kilo heavier than that, right? But then you apply your other hand.
I was up here. I was actually up here, but I realized that it was blocking that camera, so I've lowered it to here. Would you like me to put it back up here?
You don't have to keep it up. Are you getting tired though?
Yes.
Yes, well put it down, rest.
We were talking, we were continuing.
The fact that role-playing games perceive this as a dexterous weapon that gets more benefit out of finesse than other weapons always bothered me. Long swords are actually even more nimble using 2 hands, but you couldn't use weapon finesse with it. And so no, these are strength-based weapons and they get a benefit out of finesse and dexterity as much as many other weapons, honestly.
That's true. And let me just say something about like holding a sword up, talking about endurance. You wouldn't hold a sword like this for a period of, I think it's been about 3 minutes so far, roughly. You would change.
Yes.
Please continue.
Oh, look at that. You're right, but that is a transitory.
I'm not in the correct form.
Yeah. But that suddenly you're resting it on different muscles now, and you can maintain it. And there are multiple stances for Rapier. So the next thing that I really want to kind of emphasize for people to take away is the design of the Rapier. This is an optimized, highly engineered, sophisticated design to excel. Okay. Are you done?
I'm done.
You're done. I like it. It wasn't long. I was just like, I'm done.
You can hold it there for a little while, but it is getting to a point where I'm just going to tie myself out and not be able to.
Yeah, well, you did more than what I would bother to do. So, yeah, optimized. This is a sophisticated, engineered design to excel. Well, in a very specific area, but it can be used in other realms as well. But what we're talking about is the duel. Specifically, duels against other sword-like weapons more often.
Well, duels were usually based against the exact weapon that you were. Don't get me wrong, there may be slight differences like there are between 2 arming swords, but it would be 2 arming swords or 2 rapiers or what have you.
Well, let's actually demonstrate this a bit. One of the things that really shocked me when I started to get into swordsmanship, okay, and that was how much of an advantage and difference reach gives.
Oh, yes.
Even if you have like a couple of inches extra reach, that can be a game changer.
It can.
Shockingly so.
Absolutely can.
Let's have a look at the reach difference we have here. Like,
so on cross guard.
Look at that.
Yep.
All right. And that is against a pretty standard size arming sword.
And what's that, about 3-4 inches, roughly?
No, that's like 5 inches.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know, we're guys, we always get those measurements wrong.
So optimizing reach is one of the first design philosophies of a rapier. And this would give you advantage in so many combative realms, not just in duels. Rapiers were used on battlefields, okay?
They absolutely were.
But they were definitely optimized as a dueling sword, which gives you insane advantages over any weapon that's shorter. And so there is no mistake or should be no mystery as to why rapiers became the standard sidearm for a long time, because the best way to fight a rapier is with what weapon, Nate?
With another rapier.
With another rapier, before
like,
guns.
Just going
I know guns were around, but the single shot, and yeah, different like that.
And just going to pure reach, like if you stretch out your arm so that I'm just outside of range of you, I won't be able to hit your hand, and you'll be able to slice mine open.
Right there.
It is a minor difference, but it is enough that could win you the fight.
Exactly, like going in for like a snipe cut. But then we come to the matter of thrusting.
Yes.
Here's the other optimized thing that a rapier has done. It is a very interesting debate discussion, cutting versus thrusting.
Yes.
Cutting, like after lots of debate and discussion, usually the general conclusion is cuts have more instant stopping power, like you can like push against someone, but are not necessarily as lethal
Yes.
as thrusts.
Whereas historically, thrusts are very lethal.
Very lethal.
It's been documented where duels have survived so many cuts.
So many
like
cuts.
people with sliced arms, sliced pectoral muscles,
actually,
and they're still fighting.
Yeah, it's shocking how survivable some really devastating lacerations are to the human body.
But one or two sometimes stabs.
You hit those vital organs.
Yep. The body shuts down. The body drops.
So the philosophy with the rapier was to, all right, we see there are cut-oriented swords, right? This is like we are putting it all into the thrust while still maintaining cutting ability, okay? And there are accounts of the rapiers doing some cuts. The rapier is optimized to take advantage of what is basically considered the most lethal attack swords can do.
Yes.
Like, this is a thrusting beast made to be aimed for any part of the body, but of course, vital organs, torso, and that makes it particularly vicious in its design. People think, look how elegant and pretty it looks.
Which is true.
It is elegant and pretty, but you should also look at it and think, this thing is made to kill. This is deadly.
It is a fancy bullet.
Like, it is a vicious, deadly design. In actual fact, I think the rapier is one of, if not the most deadly swords ever designed.
One of. The saber its capabilities are very similar, and I believe a saber's cutting power is greater. Although its thrusting power, not so much so.
I actually think the rapier is, because it's more optimized for what it's made to do, it's actually more vicious and kind of brutal in its mentality. Where it's like, it's just, because the saber can still do a bit of, thrusting and everything like that. It's very optimized for cutting, don't get me wrong. I think the rapier is actually exaggerating those features even more so. And then look at the other really significant design feature, the swept hilt. These got more elaborate and everything like that, but again, you have this type of hilt to protect yourself from other weapons.
Yes.
Okay, it's made to fight other weapons and protect against a lot of cuts, okay? It's tricky in terms of what type of sabers you look at in terms of how protective they are. Sometimes they have more elaborate kind of, guard. Sometimes it's only a knuckle bow. And this is vastly more protective than a knuckle bow.
Having just a single knuckle bow, usually, not always, usually was later period. That's more getting into the 18th century onwards. But a lot of the earlier sabers didn't really have too much at all. They just had not quite as equivalent of a tsuba, but not too much. Whereas this, there is a lot of metal.
You get all the advantages out of a crossguard. Look at the range that you're able to deflect with it. And then it's made so you can finger the guard, put your finger over it, and then you've got side rings protecting it, and then additional sweepings to protect the hand on any angle. Now, of course, you can thrust through it, but that's a bit harder to hit. It's much easier to do a snipe.
If you're thrusting through that, a slight twist, you have a higher chance of locking up someone's blade. You may get cut, but you'll no longer get a devastating finger chopped off unless you're unlucky.
Now, sword comparisons are fun. Yes. I find them interesting. And one of the most famous comparisons, and we love to compare the popular swords, right? And everyone loves to compare longsword and katana, right? Because there's a lot of similarities that people like to put them against. But if you want to compare like swords for dueling, okay, I just want to show some of the difference between a rapier and a katana.
Okay. Whereas this is an honorable weapon that you would fight a duel with. And
yeah, they do duel with it. Now, the katana has its own type of optimization in it. It is more optimized for cutting, but it is not pushed to such an extreme as, say, certain falchions or even sabers or even certain, like the tolwar and things, where there are swords that are optimized even further for cutting. Because
they have a much greater
curve or more weight in the blade, and the katana maintains a good level of thrusting capacity. So it's more of an all-rounder, even though it is focused on cutting. Yet have a look at the reach difference here.
Yes,
that is extreme.
That is about double the reach. Maybe not quite double, but that is getting close to double the reach difference with the arming sword.
Exactly. Now, people like cuts, especially in cinematic movies, everything, they look devastating, slicing someone in half and everything. Whereas a thrust, it's like a hole that.
Yes. Yes, and in reality, that is kind of, to some degree, what happens. It's only the after effect of going, oh, there's a lot more blood coming out of that stab.
But what I find interesting is because it is more flashy, there's a coolness factor that cutting swords kind of get represented more in pop culture, and the katana is a really cool sword.
It is.
When you want to actually compare utility, especially utility in a duel, one sword is vastly, and I mean vastly more optimized
For dueling
than another. And in my opinion, right, comparing one sword versus the other for dueling, it's almost night and day as to which one is more optimized and more lethal and more effective for that. Like, here's another interesting thing that some people don't realize. You can actually get further reach extending one hand than two.
Yes.
Yeah, and let's demonstrate this.
Sure. If I stand right here and I go to reach with two hands, even if I lean forward, I'm going to get this far.
Exactly.
As soon as I let go, I can actually bend that knee much more further forward.
Now, hold that pose and you could barely even
actually I'll do that. Watch my heel lift off the ground as soon as I try to grab.
You're not really even grasping it. To hold it in a strong grip, you've got to bring it back.
I've got to bend forward or bring it back. Yes, absolutely.
So the rapier being one-handed is no mistake. They didn't do this just by random happenstance, because by having it one-handed, you can extend, and in a proper committed thrust like this, right? Not only do you get the additional reach because of their longer blade, because it's one-handed, you've got the additional kind of extension of the body.
You do.
And remember how devastating I said reach was in a duel, in a fight?
Yes,
right?
You're getting as much reach as you absolutely and utterly possibly can.
And if you've ever sparred with a rapier versus a shorter sword or a katana, remember, this isn't like the rapier wins 100% of the time. Yeah. The rapier gives far more advantages. Now, you might be able to overcome some of the, disadvantages if you're more skilled and everything, but they are hard to overcome. And when you actually practice with them, you can utilize those advantages to dominate a fight.
You hear jokes in the sword community about this overcoming blades of even greater length, the Great Claymore, the Great Scottish Claymore. There's a bit of a running joke that if you have a duel between somebody who's wielding that and wielding a rapier, you'll put your money on the rapier wielder.
I need to dispel a massive misconception, right? One of the things that people have assumed, because the rapier has a thinner, more slender blade, is that it's more fragile. And a sword that is so beefy and powerful and well made as a katana would chop through it. In actual fact, we've seen it in movies.
Well, a katana can chop through anything.
Well, right. So I'm calling out 007. It was one of the ones with Pierce Brosnan. He gets in a sword fight, and one of them grabs a rapier, and the bad guy grabs a katana and chops it in half. And that was complete bullcrap. Like, you're not going to chop through steel this thick with a katana. No. Katanas can't chop through other swords. Though we do have a video testing edge on edge.
We do, and it depends if it's a very low quality steel sword.
If there was a low quality sword, maybe. But
different.
Proper carbon steel sword, doesn't matter how good the katana is made, it's not chopping through it. Okay? And so people would think, the katana could just chop through a rapier and then get them. Nah. In actual fact, the rapier, because of its length and its maneuverability and point control, its ability to maneuver, block, and deflect, the katana, actually, it's more maneuverable because of that than the katana. And so the rapier is such a deadly and vicious sword. I actually think even more than a lot of other swords. By the way, this includes arming swords. This includes katanas.
Arming swords have to be used with shields to be properly effective.
This includes long swords as well. Long swords are longer, okay? I don't think they get as many advantages as the rapier. In actual fact, this rapier blade is as long, if not a bit longer, than most longsword blades. Yes. Like a two-handed length blade in a one-handed sword. And then you get the extra reach of the body extension. Yep. And the optimized thrusting capacity and so much.
It's almost like there's this romanticized feel about rapiers, that they are ultimate dueling weapons, and there's a bit of a reason for it.
Yeah, I mean, people use them for a reason, and the best weapon to fight a rapier is another rapier.
It really is. It really is.
So this is a more kind of dedicated deep dive debunking thing. There's so much to talk about, but we want to put this to the test.
We do.
So there's actually a video where we test how well this rapier can cut.
Yes.
It's right here. And the results are interesting.
Yes. Yes, the results were definitely interesting. Let's put it that way.
Hope to see you there. Click on right, it's right there. Right there. Check it out. You don't want to miss out.
Can I have it like he's held it the whole time?
Okay, fine, you hold it.